Hey there, welcome back to the agenda. Right, we are talking about renting properties on the show today, specifically via Airbnb, because it turns out that quite a few Airbnb landlords are counting their profits after a steep increase in interest in holiday rentals right here in Dubai. In fact, the number of listings in the Emirate has actually doubled in the last 3 years. And in 2022, the Emirates was ranked as the most profitable location in the world for Airbnb landlords. Now, that was by an organisation called CIA Landlords. And I have to admit, that stat caught my interest. I was a bit like, oh, so is that a way that you could maybe make money? You might remember earlier in the show this week, we were talking about pensions and, you know, how you can develop a savings pot for your retirement. And Steve Cronin from Dead Simple Saving was talking about how you can either invest in stocks and shares as an asset class, or you can invest in property as an asset class. So I suppose this would sort of fall into the property department for obvious reasons. Now, at the moment, there are just 25,000 active Airbnb listings in the UAE, in Dubai, I think specifically. That is up by more than 11,000 from 2021. And then this is the stat that worries me a bit. They have an annual average occupancy of 56%. Okay, that's all according to ValueStrat. So how can you make money from Airbnb? One man doing very well for himself is Redeet Negate. He runs a holiday home business called Smart Stay. He currently has a portfolio of 24 properties listed on Airbnb. And he's also the founder of the B&B in Dubai community. You can find him on Instagram, as I did, at B&B in Dubai. And it's great to have you join us in the studio, Redeet. How are you?
Thank you, Georgia. First of all, thank you for inviting me. It's a big pleasure to be here. Doing good. Looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell me, when and why did you start your company here in the UAE?
I got my license in March last year, but I started with my first apartment in June 2023. That was my first apartment, and the reason why I started in the UAE, in Dubai specifically, is because there's like this huge potential of growth in Dubai that has already been like showcased in over the last 20, 30 years. And I see a lot of growth in the future in the tourism sector as well. The government is really supporting as well. And that helps, you know. There are a couple more reasons, obviously, but Dubai was the place to be for me and to start my company.
Now, did you move out to Dubai from the Netherlands, or were you already here?
Oh, that's a funny story, because initially my idea was to do like just a few apartments, run it remotely from the Netherlands, because I lived in The Hague, I must say now, in the Netherlands. I wanted to do it remotely, but at some point I saw the huge potential of actually putting more time and effort and moving here, and also it required the effort to like grow the business in a proper way. So now I moved last September, and now I'm living here in this beautiful city.
Fantastic. Now tell me why you thought there was opportunities here. You know, I guess there must be quite a lot of rules around renting on Airbnb, you know, government regulations.
Yes. So this is the thing, like all around the world, there's like the question, can you do Airbnb? Is it legal? Is it allowed? That differs like in every country, in every city, right? The great thing here in Dubai is it is regulated. There's clear regulation. You don't have to be afraid or scared that when you set up your company this year and you invest a lot of money, that next year suddenly the government is going to change the regulations and you have to stop or shut down, or the nights that you can do Airbnb is going to be drastically reduced. So that's a great thing. The regulation is there. So first of all, you will need like a mainland LLC, a mainland company here in Dubai. Once you have your mainland company, you can get your license from the DTCM. And from that point onwards, you get your permits per unit from the owner, an NOC, from the DTCM, a permit, and then from the building, also a permit to move in as a holiday home company.
So that's if you want to do it as a company. Can you do it as an
Correct.
individual as well? Do you still need to make a company in order to do it as an individual? If you just wanted to rent out your own apartment?
There are some nuances to that.
Okay.
So if you own the apartments, you can do it with 8 apartments or units in Dubai. If you own them, you can do it without a company. If you rent an apartment, it can only be one completely by yourself, but you will need the approval of the owner.
Wow, you really know all the details. That's amazing.
I try to, yeah.
And what's so interesting is you say there that what's good about the government here is that they've clarified those regulations, because I remember back in London, loads of people were doing it in London. And then all of a sudden this rule came out that you were only allowed to rent for a certain number of days.
Exactly.
And the bottom instantly fell out of that market. You know, people were having to sell flats because they couldn't cover their costs ultimately.
Exactly. I mean, it's the same thing in the Netherlands, right? The margins in a lot of other countries are higher than in Dubai. So on average, if you're doing a good job, if you do rental arbitrage, that's the model I use most, where I rent an apartment for the long term and I sublet it for short-term rentals. There's like a multiple. So you make on revenue approximately 1.8 times the annual rent if you do it on a short-term basis, full-time, and you do it well. Now, that's a multiple in Dubai. In other countries, it could be higher. For example, in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam, the multiple is way higher. There are a lot of places where the multiple could be higher, but then the government steps in and there might be a shortage of housing, and that will basically restrict the nights you can do Airbnb, so it's not even possible anymore. So Dubai is a very competitive market. It's not the most attractive market to do subleasing purely from a profit perspective, but you can scale and you can be safe because you don't have to be scared that from one night to the other, suddenly you have to shut down your business.
But I've got about 3 or 4 other questions that I'd like to ask you.
Sure.
Because that is quite interesting, the fact that if you're going to go down the buying property route, then you will need to be making a regular profit. You will need to be making regular money. Redeet, let me ask you about these rules around renting on Airbnb. Do they have rules about what you're required to do in order to qualify for their platform?
Well, there are rules on Airbnb, and I think that initially there are more rules in Dubai specifically, so to say, than on the platform of Airbnb as for the property and the qualifications of the property. So in Dubai, you can only put your whole apartments or whole house on short-term rental, and you cannot rent out rooms. On Airbnb, you could. So as long as you adhere to the DTCM rules and regulations, you'll be good for the Airbnb specific ones as well in Dubai.
So you tend to look after apartments for people, don't you? So your owners are covering all the sort of mortgage repayments and all the rest of it, and you're just managing the properties for them.
Yes. So there are 2 models I work in. One is subleasing, rental arbitrage. So I rent the apartment on a long term and I short term sublet it to, for example, tourists. And the other model is revenue sharing, where a landlord, an owner, an investor buys an apartment or buys a villa and gives it to me to maximize their ROI. Right. So what I then do is I list it on all the platforms, take care of the check-in, check-outs, we furnish it, etc., etc. We take a commission, and the biggest chunk of the revenue is going to be for the landlord. So the landlord will make more money on the short term than on the long term.
Are there tricks to the trade? Are there ways to make your apartment look more attractive to tourists, for example?
Yeah. This is super important, especially in a competitive market like Dubai. You cannot be just one of the 25,000, I believe even more by now, listings. You need to stand out. So obviously it's pricing. You need to have a competitive price, make sure that you use smart pricing. So when there's high occupancy, you have a higher pricing. When there's low occupancy, low demand, lower pricing. You can automate that with software. That's one. Second, your listing needs to be attractive. So you must remember, people don't buy your apartment or your villa. They buy the photos, they buy the listing, right? They look online, they see the listing, and based on what they see in the listing and on the pictures, they decide. So the quality of the pictures is very important. And lastly, you want to make sure, actually 2 more things. One is the reviews. You must be a superhost. You must have a high review average to attract new guests. And what's also very important, you need to have the amenities. So for example, a baby bed or a washer dryer. Such things, you basically tick them in your search results on Airbnb. And the more things you select, the less units there will be left. So the less competition you will have as an Airbnb host.
Really interesting stuff. I want to talk to Redeet now about trends in this short-term rental market. I've got about a minute left with you. Is that one of the trends? You're seeing people who are coming in and, just taking a place for a couple of months?
Yes, we do get guests who stay like for a week initially and then happen to extend for another week and a week and a week and we can stay for a couple of months, especially in the one beds and studios. Like Joe just said, these are like great relocation, like intermediary houses before they find their own property. So although I think in the trend, the biggest trend here in Dubai is the competition is increasing a lot, right? So like you just said, within 3 years from 11,000 to 25,000, that's a huge increase. So the increased competition will require Airbnb hosts to differentiate, to be different, to stand out. And I think that's going to be the biggest challenge over the coming years for Airbnb hosts to still make money. You can do it. It's really possible to do it, to be a profitable business, but you must stand out from the competition. And that's actually one of the reasons I set up my community. Because for me, when I started the company last year, there was no information available, right? There was nothing, the information was there, but very scattered. And now with this community, I try to have it like at one place for everybody and also have the Airbnb hosts, starting Airbnb hosts, help each other out and make sure that we can win in the landscape of Airbnb in Dubai.
And what's it like? Is there a good community? Have you found lots of people who are in the same zone?
Yeah, it's amazing. It's super nice. We're reaching around 100 members of the B&B in Dubai community. It's great, and people help each other out. We share like good deals for either cleaning, software, etc., etc., and also like the tricks. Like how do you make profit? Like what locations, what type of like apartments? Maybe if I can share like one little insight, you see that the competition on 2 and 3 or ideally even 4 beds, that competition is way less than the studios and the 1 beds. So this is one of the things that I share in the community. You see that the profit numbers for these multi-bedroom apartments are just higher than the studios and the 1 beds. So these things we share and we help each other out in the community. It's great to see. I love the energy there. Yeah.
Really lovely to have you join us in the studio today. Honestly, I've had 3 fantastic guests on this topic. Huge thanks there to Redeet Negate for joining us. He's the CEO of smartstay.me. You can find his community. It is the @B&B in Dubai community on Instagram. Fascinating conversation. Thank you very much.
Your ARN News.